Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. We are discussing the different verses of the Holy Quran regarding creation. These verses we have written chapter number 4 of our book, An Ultimate Solution to the Darkened Illusions. Chapter number 4 is Quran and creation. So we have discussed some miscellaneous verses regarding creation. Then we discussed creation of life, water and life, creation of all things, creation of man in various parts and 3 or 4 parts. And then we discuss flawless creation, creation of death and life, the knowing creator. So today we have written a few verses from the new subheadings: creation tires him not, and creation of grazing livestock. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولقد خلقنا السماوات والأرض وما بينهما في 6 أيام وما مسنا من لغوب ولقد and certainly خلقنا السماوات, we created the heavens, والأرض and earth, وما بينهما and whatever lies between them, في 6 أيام in 6 yom, 6 days or 6 stages. وما and not مسنا touched us من لغوب fatigue. Allah Almighty says that certainly we created the heavens and the earth and whatever lies between them in 6 days or 6 stages, and no fatigue touched us. وما مسنا من لغوب, and no fatigue touched us. We have written a chapter, Allah. In that chapter we have discussed few of the attributes of Allah Almighty. That Allah Almighty is the Supreme Being and He is immortal. No understanding can fully comprehend Him and no imagination can fully conceive of Him. He has created all the things. He conducts all the affairs from the heavens to the earth. And He is the sustainer, He is the cherisher, He is the provider. Allah Almighty is not dependent on creation, while all the creation is in absolute need of Allah Almighty. And Allah Almighty says in the Holy Quran, Al-Hayyul Qayyum, the ever-living, Al-Qayyum, the sustainer of all the creation. La ta'khudhuhu sina wa la nawm, and drowsiness and sleep do not overtake him. وَلَا يَعُودُهُ حِفْظُهُمَا, and preservation of these tires him not. So Allah Almighty says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضَ وَمَا بَيْنَهُمَا فِي 6 أَيَّامٍ وَمَا مَسَّنَا مِن لُغُوبٍ. Allah Almighty says that certainly we created the heavens and the earth and whatever lies between them, and no fatigue touched us, Allah Almighty says. This was verse number 38 of chapter number 50. The next verse is from chapter 16. Allah Almighty says, وَالْأَنْعَامَ خَلَقَهَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا دِفْءٌ وَمَنَافِعُ وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ. Allah Almighty says, وَالْأَنْعَامَ, and the grazing livestock, خَلَقَهَا, He created, لَكُمْ, for you, فِيهَا, in them, dif'un, warmth, وَمَنَافِعُ, and benefits, other benefits, وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ, and from them you eat. So the grazing livestock, Allah Almighty says that He has created, and they are not the result of random and haphazard phenomena, that all of these things come out of fish by the process of evolution by chance. No, Allah Almighty says that we have created, He has created, Allah Almighty has created, وَالْأَنْعَامَ خَلَقَهَا, and this was the will of Allah Almighty, and they have been created for a purpose. وَالْأَنْعَامَ خَلَقَهَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا دِفْءٌ, for you in them is warmth. That is, we get the wool, وَمَنَافِعُ, and other benefits, many other benefits, وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ, and from them you eat. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا جَمَالٌ حِينَ تُرِيحُونَ وَحِينَ تَصْرَحُونَ. وَلَكُمْ and for you fiha in them jamalun, beauty, hina turihuna, when you bring them in the evening, wahina tasrahun, and when you lead them out to pasture in the morning. The next verse is Allah Almighty says, وَتَحْمِلُ أَثْقَالَكُمْ إِلَى بَلَدٍ لَمْ تَكُونُوا بَالِغِيهِ إِلَّا بِشِقِّ الْأَنفُسِ إِنَّ رَبَّكُمْ لَرَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ. وَتَحْمِلُ, and they carry أَثْقَالَكُمْ, your loads, إِلَى بَلَدٍ لَمْ تَكُونُوا بَالِغِيهِ, you could not have reached إِلَّا بِشِقِّ الْأَنفُسِ, except with a difficulty to yourselves. Allah Almighty says that some of the animals you use for carrying your loads to different cities, to different areas, and you would not have been able to reach those areas to carry your loads without these animals, but with a difficulty. So Allah Almighty says, وَتَحْمِلُ أَثْقَالَكُمْ إِلَى بَلَدٍ لَمْ تَكُونُوا بَالِغِيهِ إِلَّا بِشِقِّ الْأَنفُسِ, and they carry your loads to a land you could not have been able to reach there except with a difficulty to yourselves. إِنَّ رَبَّكُمْ لَرَؤُوفٌ رَحِيمٌ, indeed your Rabb is kind and merciful. The next verse from the same chapter, verse number 8, Allah Almighty says, وَالْخَيْلَ وَالْبِغَالَ وَالْحَمِيرَ لِتَرْكَبُوهَا وَزِينَةً وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. وَالْخَيْلَ, and horses, وَالْبِغَالَ, and mules, وَالْحَمِيرَ, and donkeys. That is, He has created the horses, mules, and donkeys, لِتَرْكَبُوهَا, so that you ride on them, وَزِينَةً, and as adornment, وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ, and He creates which they do not know. That is, the things which you know and which are mentioned, these are also created by Allah Almighty, and those things which you do not know, and there are many other creatures which you do not know but Allah Almighty has created. وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. So Allah Almighty is the creator of all things. All of the things are created by Allah Almighty, and they have been created for a specific purpose, as few things are mentioned in these verses which we recited. وَالْأَنْعَامَ خَلَقَهَا لَكُمْ فِيهَا دِفْءٌ وَمَنَافِعُ وَمِنْهَا تَأْكُلُونَ. An'am, the grazing livestock, they are created by Allah. They are not a result of random and haphazard phenomena of evolution, as some people say. Rather, these an'am are created by Allah Almighty, and they are being created for a purpose. So we get numerous benefits from these animals, and we use the milk and meat. وَلَكُمْ فِيهَا جَمَالٌ حِينَ تُرِيحُونَ وَحِينَ تُصْرَحُونَ, and for you in them is beauty when you bring them in the evening, and when you lead them out in the morning to pasture. And these animals carry your loads to a land which you could not have reached without a difficulty to yourselves. Indeed, your Lord is kind and merciful. وَالْخَيْلَ وَالْبِغَالَ وَالْحَمِيرَ لِتَرْكَبُوهَا وَزِينَةً وَيَخْلُقُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. The horses, the mules, and donkeys, they are created by Allah Almighty so that you can ride on them and as adornment, and He has even created things which you do not know. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.